Hi, this is Southampton Town Supervisor Jay Schneiderman, and welcome to another special edition of Talk of the Town. This show, we normally take a look at various issues facing our community, but today we're focused only on one, and that is the coronavirus outbreak. And today I'm joined by State Assemblyman Fred Thiele. Thank you, Fred. Normally I would shake your hand, but and normally we'd be sitting a little closer together.
We're at least 6 feet apart as we tape this show.
Exactly. Social distancing, a word or a phrase we're not familiar with.
Well, you have to practice what you preach. And we're all preaching social distancing these days.
I've talked to our viewers quite a bit about things we're doing here at the town level, and I know you're very closely involved with the town, but working at the state level as well. And a lot of the direction we're getting is coming through the state, through Governor Andrew Cuomo, and that those directions seem to change almost daily. Can be challenging for us to even keep up with it. So can you go through some of the steps the governor has enacted to try to reduce the spread of the coronavirus?
Well, certainly, and because we are in an emergency situation, and as you know, under the executive law, the governor has emergency authority, just as you as the executive in the town have emergency authority. And throughout this crisis, the governor has exercised that emergency authority, and it's been a very fast-changing situation. Obviously, as we see, we can kind of see the wave coming, but now, we're starting to feel it, and the governor has adjusted to that almost on a daily basis. For example, one of the things that just changed as we tape this show today was with regard to non-essential businesses and the number of employees that they could have, working on the business. Now, yesterday it was 50%. That number now has been increased to 75% for non-essential businesses.
Now, is that immediate, or does it go into effect?
It's going to affect this evening.
This evening.
Yeah. So.
And what is that? What is a non-essential business in the governor's definition?
Well, I mean, that is certainly, that's probably one of the most asked questions, but certainly, healthcare, pharmacy, grocery stores, transportation, all, for example, have been defined to be essential. Involved in the in the chain of production for those things, food and medicine and things of that nature. So how does a
business, let's say you're in a retail store, I guess maybe some places could, first, if you only have 2 people there normally working in the retail store, how do you drop down by 75%?
Yeah.
But in some cases, it could present safety issues, equipment that needs to be monitored or to prevent theft, if you only have 1 person in the store when normally you have 2 people. I don't know, it could get a little
risky. They're difficult questions when you get to the application of these orders. And as you know, we're in frequent contact with the governor's office, and we raise a lot of these questions, which sometimes result in some fine-tuning of these orders. But, my general advice, whether it's been to local government, the town, where the villages, the mayors, the supervisors, or is to local business, is to look at what the governor has put into his executive order and what the intent of that order is. And if there's a gray area, you try to meet the intent of the order. The general intent of all of these orders is to reduce, the number of people that are out in public. So,
I think a lot of businesses, if they could reduce their staff by 75% and operate, they probably would have done it to begin with.
Quite frankly,
so most people don't have more staff than they actually need to run their businesses.
Quite frankly, I think that when you get to 75%, that's going to present people with actually the decision whether or not they can stay open or can't stay open.
A lot, I think, will have to just shutter their doors. I mean, we're going to talk more about the health concerns, but this gets back to the economics of this. When are those businesses going to pay those employees? If they shut down, are they laying them off? Are they going on unemployment? Will they have enough money to pay their rents and their mortgages? Will the business owner be able to pay his rent or her rent? Are people going to default on major payments, loans, et cetera?
Well, it's a great question, and I'm betting you've probably seen a similar shift to what I've seen. Beginning last week when kind of the switch kind of flipped on this, when it became more real to people and less theoretical that we were indeed, confronting a pandemic, and that it was here,
Right.
Southold. It was here.
Southold now has
33 cases.
Active cases.
Initially, the inquiries to my office, and I'm betting Town Hall was the same, were all health related. It was, what do we need to do to protect ourselves? How do we protect our health? Wash your hands, social distancing, what's going on, what is our hospital doing? All of those kinds of public health related questions,
Right.
and people's primary concern was being safe. And now, as we've progressed over, it seems like a lot longer, but it's actually just about a week, when we've seen town halls shut down. We've seen bars and restaurants and theaters shut down. We've seen local businesses now have to reduce their
Right.
number of employees by 75%. Now the questions are, people are still concerned about testing. They're still concerned about whether the hospitals are prepared, but now they're starting to ask questions about the economics.
Right.
I'm hearing from local small businesses. I'm hearing from a lot of our not-for-profits, whether it be childcare or the Bay Street Theater, local businesses wondering what's going to happen next, what's going to be
Yeah.
available.
How will they survive? I had
because-
a hotel call when the president announced the travel ban from Europe. There was a slew of cancellations from European travelers. A lot of Europeans come here. They rent homes for the summer. They rent hotel rooms. And one hotel called me and said, "Look, we lost $100,000 in deposits overnight
Yeah.
with that one move." That's a big hit. So yeah, I think that we haven't begun to understand the economic impacts. All the people who make their living off of tips at restaurants, there's no indoor dining. There's no indoor dining. People, musicians who play at these restaurants, whatever it is, they make their living off of playing music. There's nobody to play to perform to. And even, I don't know how, there may be some that won't be able to get unemployment, won't be able to qualify. So it's going to be.
Well, in some of the things we're seeing, the state's unemployment system, the computer has crashed there. They used to get about 2,800 inquiries a week. They're getting 25,000, from 2,800 a week to 25,000
Wow.
a day. And,
Yeah.
so that obviously
They'll
is
never be
presented
able
an
to
issue.
keep up with that. And then,
The governor's announced some things like, with mortgage forbearance for 90 days and things of that nature. But most small businesses, and we're going to be parochial here, we're out here on the South Fork, Southampton, East Hampton, the East End in general, really. And, it's a summer-based economy. Most businesses make the great amount of their revenue between Memorial Day and Labor Day. And, most small businesses, they might have a cushion for a month, or maybe they might have a cushion, maybe for 2 months, depending on the size of the business. But as we start to look at something that may extend into the summer season, these issues of how are we going to make, how are we going to keep our small businesses afloat? And it's not something that the town can handle by itself. It certainly isn't even something that the state of New York can handle by itself. We don't print money. We can't deficit spend.
there are seasonal businesses out here who lose money all winter. They just try to keep their staff employed, knowing that in the summer they'll catch up. They want to keep their operations year-round, and they're willing to lose money in the wintertime. But they can't. They don't have that cushion at all. They're like depending upon Memorial Day to finally have the money to pay all the bills. And we don't know to what degree this will be over by Memorial Day. We've seen all these parades canceled. Those parades were good business for a lot of our downtowns. And downtowns have suffered a lot, as we know already, in this Amazon era. these special events getting canceled definitely hurt. There's another piece besides the physical health impacts, the actual fevers and things like that and sore throats. There's a psychological impact here too that, it'll be a long time before we fully understand what some of the kids are going through. It must feel like their entire world, all the structure that they know, all the routine that they know is gone. Right? Schools, they had to leave schools. They see the playgrounds are closed. They're home now. People aren't hugging. People are,
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, people's routines are completely disrupted. What people would normally do day to day, they can't do. That's very unsettling. So you have that aspect of it. The second part of this is that it changes so fast.
Yeah.
It changes so fast. It's hard to keep up with all of the information, all of the knowledge, or all of the information that's coming at us. And third, which I think is the most unnerving of all, and you and I have been in government for a long time. We've dealt with snowstorms, we've dealt with wildfires, we've dealt with hurricanes, we've dealt with economic downturns, but they all have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
And pretty quick, usually compressed.
The thing I think that people find most disconcerting of all about all of this is that they don't know when it's going to end, and nobody knows when it's going to end. There's been nothing in people's experience that they can quite liken it to. I mean, I saw somebody describe it as it's like 9/11 meets the Great Recession meets
anthrax scares.
Yeah, and it's like all of that rolled into one because people don't know when it's going to end and how it's going to end.
Yeah, I was down where we're separating the mail. When the mail comes in now, we're letting it sit for like 24 hours or 48, whatever the protocol is. It reminded me of the anthrax days where we had the mail sort of checked out separately. I've never seen anything remotely like this I've been in elected office 20 years, 27 years total in government, and there's no playbook, there's no game plan, there's no pandemic emergency response plan that I can go to and say this is what I'm supposed to do. So we have been scrambling in a way. It seems the strategy that has emerged is to the phrase everybody's using is flatten the curve, blunt the curve, let the hospitals ramp up with ICU beds and ventilators and medicine and nursing staff, whatever. Try to keep seniors from getting this as much as possible as the most vulnerable population, and to basically social engineer immediately so that interactions are minimized and people stay home, don't go out. And that's, the secondary things we talked about, like the psychological impacts or the economic impacts, have sort of been put aside and said, okay, we have to take immediate measures to distance ourselves. And so we declared a state of emergency here at Town Hall. We stopped the public from coming in. I shut down the playgrounds. We shut down our senior programs, kept delivering meals. It was, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were talking about the tax code and how it affected rebates for sanitary systems. That seems so distant, right? We were trying to figure out how to deal with the county controller's view and the IRS, opinion on that. We were talking about all kinds of things that I would love to talk about at this point. I'd love to go back to, the days of figuring out what land should be preserved. But right now, all conversations have practically been silenced, and there's only one thing we're talking about, is this, COVID-19.
From the minute I get in my office in the morning and till I leave at night, it's 99% dealing with COVID-19. That is what we are doing. And, there are some things that we can do here locally that we rely on the federal government. You rely on the state government, but it also requires a lot of community and local reliance. You're already seeing situations out there where we as a community, we might not be able to solve where are all the test kits. We advocate for that. That's what we do as elected officials, but we don't control that. We advocate to make sure that we have enough hospital beds and enough masks and enough ventilators in our local community. We all advocate, but we can't directly control those things. But there are things we can do to help our fellow citizens. I got a call from Peter Haskell, is a local commercial fisherman, and he does commercial wholesaling. You had the commercial fishermen who can't get their product to market. You've got him who's there, and you've got people that can't.
Lots of food out there in the sea.
Yeah, people that are having difficulty getting to the grocery store, and he's kind of been in the position. Well, we take the fish from the commercial fishermen who having trouble marketing it. You process it and you get it to the local residents here, and so you set up things like that. You've got the local school districts. One of the concerns was, well, those students that are on free and reduced lunches, what's going to happen to them? They've reversed their bus routes. In the morning, they're delivering the meals through their buses back to the community. So, these are the kinds of things I think that that we try to do as elected officials, to try to to work with people, to facilitate, to try to make life a little bit easier.
Councilwoman Lofstad, I know, has been working with some of the commercial fishermen and trying to figure out a processing place where where they can keep everything cold and they can process it. Because, we shouldn't have any food scarcity out here. The sea is abundant. In fact, I think they're getting really great catches right now, but they don't really have the means to get it to the people, which I think is really important. I've been working with a bunch of people, too, on trying to close this service gap that we see. We're seeing a lot of seniors. We're telling them to stay home, but they're out and about. They're getting batteries for smoke detectors at the hardware store. They're picking up stuff at Citarella. They're going to CVS to buy, little things that they need. And in doing so, they're really taking a risk that they shouldn't be taking. So, with all these staff reductions, the town has a fleet of vehicles. We have a fleet of employees, lots of employees. We think that we may be able to help deliver items to seniors so that they could stay home. So we're working on a service. We even sort of temporarily named it ASAP, All Seniors Assistance Program, because you don't have to be income qualified. You just basically call a number, you register, or go to the website. You'll see all the participating vendors, and then you call the vendor, tell them what you need, give them the credit card. When they have your order ready, they call us. We then send somebody to get it and bring it to you, which is kind of neat. It's really a repurposing, in a way, of local government, saying we're going to go into delivering items to seniors.
But these are the current needs, and you have to adapt and adjust and be creative to address the daily needs that people have that under normal circumstances you wouldn't even think about.
I know. Do you see the governor taking any other actions? Do you see more coming our way?
Well, in some ways it's a loaded question, because if you had asked me a week ago whether I would have seen the very things that have been imposed, as far as closing restaurants and bars and closing all the schools and reducing the workforce by 75%, I'm not sure I would have said that a week ago. It's hard to judge until you're confronted with the facts themselves. I would say this is that, one of the things that gets thrown around a lot now in New York State is whether or not we should be in a total quarantine kind of lockdown that you've seen in some of the communities in California. And, the governor has completely resisted that position, that kind of total shutdown. And I hope he sticks to that. If events evolve to where that becomes necessary, I guess we'll have a further discussion. But What I would hope now is that, we've done the things that government can put out there as far as people's daily lives, as far as social interaction, to try to limit that. What I think where we need to focus now, which I think the governor is focusing on, is making sure that those steps were kind of to flatten the curve, you should say. I think we need to make sure we get as much as we can get here in the way of medical resources, and then again, I think we have to start focusing on some of these issues as far as economic impacts.
Have you been in touch much with the hospital?
I talk with the hospital virtually every day, Southampton Hospital, and
Is your sense that they're prepared, at least at the moment?
I think they're prepared at the moment. I think they've done an outstanding job. As you know, Bob Challender is an outstanding executive, and I think they're preparing the best that they can. It's probably a good thing now. We used to have all local community hospitals. They're part of a larger system with Stony Brook University, which I think is helpful. But, I look, some of the things we would still like to get more testing here. It would be nice to have
Do you think, I know they set up today, I guess it's active today, at the main campus of SUNY, Stony Brook. There is a drive-through, mobile testing.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll get one further east?
I do think we'll get one further east. It is, I think, the logistics of that are being planned right now.
Right.
The thing I think people want to make sure of is that it's not just that you have a location set up, but that you actually have the tests and you have the masks and you have the supplies to be able to run it. So I do think that's
Have you heard
possible.
anything? I heard there may be some talk in terms of hospital beds of trying to reopen the John J. Foley nursing home. Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard anything specifically about the Foley nursing home, but I do know that the state is in the process of inventorying what buildings or what assets might be available in case space is needed for hospital beds. And to me, you would think that Foley, the old Foley nursing home,
could be a perfect location.
Could be one of those locations.
No, we've closed a lot of things at town. All of our zoning board meetings are postponed, and planning board meetings are postponed. The town board continues to meet. In fact, we had a meeting earlier today, and we'll have one next week. Is the assembly still meeting?
We met yesterday. We passed legislation providing 2 weeks of guaranteed sick leave, family leave for everybody. There's different criteria depending on the size of businesses.
Can you manage the the 6 foot social distancing?
Well, the way we did it is, we all went to our offices. We had 2 bills to consider yesterday. One was the family leave, and the second was with regard to political petitions. We had to set new deadlines for their submission. But you contacted the majority leader if you wanted to debate a bill, and people were able to go. We created 9 groups, and group 1, anybody want to debate this bill, then to group 2, and if you wanted, you would call the majority leader's office, and when they told you, you would go over to the chamber for your part of the debate. So we went through that first, and then we voted in groups so that there was never more than 30 people in the chamber at the same time.
Any concerns of being with so many people in terms of the spread of the virus?
Well, certainly you think about it, and the fact is that one of the members of the assembly that was there yesterday to vote was today was tested and found to be positive. So she wasn't in my group.
Not
and
the
I,
first.
And I didn't see her.
And she's not the first assembly person.
No, she's the third. We've had 3 members of the assembly test positive.
How many members are there in the assembly?
150. So there are concerns. Certainly members have concerns, but I think in particular, we're very concerned about our staffs that are
sure.
The local district office staff. We have an office where but we're kind of separated from. It's not a large group of people in one place. But, when you get to Albany and you've got this 150
Yeah, I think in
assembly
Georgia,
members.
I think it was Georgia that they quarantined the legislature down there, the assembly, state assembly or something. There was a
Right. And
an
so,
outbreak.
we've been very cautious, because a member was diagnosed today and was in town yesterday, in Albany yesterday. A lot of staff was sent home today. The building will be completely cleaned again. The other thing that's going on as far as the state government goes, I say, it's been all COVID-19 all the time, but we also have to provide the state with a budget by April 1st, which is
Right.
only 2 weeks away. So, negotiations continue on with regard to the budget and under very trying circumstances. As you know, in New York State, a lot of times, a lot of policy matters get put into the budget. Things like, legalization of marijuana,
Sure.
criminal justice reform, these kinds of things. I think a lot of those things, not all of them, because some things will have to happen, but a lot of them are going to fall off the table. The other thing is, in trying to do a $175 billion budget for the state of New York without knowing what the economic impact of the virus is going to be, I think we're going to have to be very flexible in putting a budget together.
The towns were funded mostly by property taxes, and it's pretty predictable. Most people are going to pay their taxes, and those that don't, the county makes the town whole. But the state's main funding sources are sales tax and income tax, right?
Income tax, corporate business taxes, and the sales tax. Those are our major.
So all three of those are going to fluctuate with the economy.
Well, not only are they going to fluctuate with the economy, but it's estimated that somewhere between 15 to 20% of those revenues, at least the income tax revenues, which is the biggest source, all relate to Wall Street. Wall Street is in New York. The financial sector of our economy is a big part of our economy. And as we know, there's been nothing that's been more volatile than the stock market over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so that could really affect your ability to do all the important programs the state does. And you guys provide the main social safety net that gets passed down that the county administers, whether it's, Medicaid or, homeless shelters or public transportation. It's all coming through the state in one aspect or another. So that could really devastate the local area as well.
Well, this budget cycle, because of Medicaid costs, and of course, health care now is more important than ever. So, how do you, there's a problem with the budget due to Medicaid, but, it was projected we had a $6 billion budget gap that we had to close.
Right.
We have a letter, an estimate from the state comptroller, Tom DiNapoli, saying that based on what he's seeing now, that the impact from the virus on revenues could be as much as $7 billion.
So now it becomes a $13
billion. So, those are big numbers, for a state budget. Unlike the federal government, we can't deficit finance. We have to balance our budget, and we don't print money. So we have to deal with that. So
well, how do you close a $13 billion hole?
And, obviously we need to, adequately provide, the resources to local governments and
it's not like you can just pass it down either.
Yeah, I mean, whatever package is being, ultimately considered on the federal level, and what resources are going to come from the federal government, it's going to be critically important, I think, to both state government and to local government.
Right. Boy, it's a lot of challenges. These are serious.
Well, you said it towards the beginning of this show. You've never seen anything like this.
I don't want to leave viewers with total gloom forecast. I mean, there was some positive news that came out of China that this is a country that had over 100,000 cases, and just yesterday they had 0 new cases, 0, which is remarkable. The whole nation of China, not a single positive test. So I'm hoping that, that is the light at the end of the tunnel, that, we will, through all these kind of draconian, very restrictive measures, we'll start to see the numbers go down. And There'll be a vaccine at some point that, so if people don't get the COVID-19, they'll be able to get the vaccine and they'll be able to avoid getting it. I'm hoping some of these efforts are working. We're telling people to stay home, but this also is a good time, I think, for people to discover nature. I know you have been a real leader in environmental protection and preservation. You fought like hell to get us the Community Preservation Fund, which has generated, I think, over $1 billion, on the East End to preserve open space. And now is probably a good time for people to learn about some of those open spaces, to get out in the woods, to go for a hike, to walk along the beach, discover a park that they don't know about, to recreate, and take advantage of all the work that we've been doing to maintain these open spaces and keep our area beautiful. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do, and it is March, and the weather is starting to get warmer. It's not spring yet. Spring kind of arrives all of a sudden here a lot of the times, but people can get outside, and you can't go to the movies, you can't go out to dinner, you can't go to the shopping mall. There's a lot of things you can't do. Being outside, I think, is an option for people. I'll just tell you one kind of anecdotal story. You probably know that it's a town facility. I go to Long Beach, Foster Memorial Beach, which everybody locally knows as Long Beach. I walk there every day. When I'm not in Albany, I go to Long Beach and I walk. And that's my exercise. It's both physical and mental health for me. And it's, this time of year, it's usually pretty lonely walking out there. And, or I'll drive across the beach and there'll be a few cars, a few hardy souls that will walk across the beach. Well, I was leaving work about 5:30 earlier this week. And if you remember, it was a couple of days ago, it rained all day, rained in the morning, and it got pretty nice in the afternoon. Maybe it was up around 50 degrees. There had to be like 50 cars on Long Beach.
Wow.
And the great thing about Long Beach is that, I say 50 cars, people are probably cringing. 50, how many people were on but if you know Long Beach, it extends for about a mile. People were able to take advantage of that facility and do their social distancing all at the same time. So I think, people, they will find ways to cope, ways to survive.
What about the Long Pond Greenbelt? I know some people probably never heard of that. I know you're familiar with it. You've probably hiked it.
I've walked through the Long Pond Greenbelt.
So tell us about that. Is that something worth checking out?
Well, that's two things I would say about the Long Pond Greenbelt. One, it's gorgeous, and it spreads from Sag Harbor all the way to Bridgehampton, all the way to Sagaponack. But I would recommend it to people, but I would also say as times get warmer, as it's getting warmer, stay on the trails.
Yeah.
Stay on.
And they can spray themselves with DEET.
Yeah, right? You don't want COVID-19. You don't want Lyme disease either.
Right.
So people, they still need to be cautious about that. Would be my only caveat about the Long Pond Greenbelt.
Any other favorite outdoor places to discover? And Morton, have you been? I'm sure. Yeah,
Morton is a great place. Also, when we're talking about places near where I live, east of the canal, Morton is the wildlife refuge, which is a federal facility, is certainly.
Walking dunes out in Montauk is one of my favorite places anywhere.
Listen, there are plenty of opportunities for outdoor recreation and for people to get outside, and it improves your disposition, I think, too, and to get outside and I think it's going to be, especially as the weather gets better. People cannot be in the house,
right, all
the time. I mean, it can't happen, and for those that have young kids, they really can't be in the house all the time. So, I think you do have to, you do have to make plans. Outdoor recreation and the facilities we have out here is certainly one of those options.
Yeah, I know, like social distancing is great, and then you come home and then you're all together, and then you get the cabin fever. It's just too close. The quarters are too close sometimes, and that can be really stressful
Yeah.
too, when people don't have that personal space that they need.
Yeah, there are ways, I think, for people to, to alter their behaviors and maybe find some new ways for recreation. And certainly our parks and our beaches,
I did see,
provide that opportunity.
I saw a lot of families out enjoying the parks, mothers and fathers with their kids, and it reminded me a little bit of when I was a kid, and we had the ice storm. Remember the big ice storm? And like I remember it fondly. I mean, our TV went out, our power went out, but I remember how close my family felt during that emergency, and how we felt like a unit, that we were listening to each other. We were playing card games together. And I wonder if for some of these kids that this is a moment where maybe, they're coming together and getting stronger as family units. That it's so easy to disconnect with iPhones and laptops and TVs. But if people do take the opportunity to get out into nature and to reconnect a little bit,
yeah,
there could be some positives. I mean, it's hard to find a silver lining to this.
Yeah, but hopefully there is one. But and listen, having social media and the internet and be able to get people information in times like this is extremely important. But it also to get through the issues that we're facing requires a community to act together and to act jointly, and there may be aspects of community that we rediscover because of this. Right,
and we're certainly using technology so that people can get forms and things from home more than ever, teleconferencing, and maybe some of those technological things will help us reduce our carbon footprint. And
this was true after 9/11, and it's going to be true with this, and that is that at some point we are going to get through this. There's just no question about that. We're going to get through this. But the world that we return to, as it was the case after 9/11, is going to be a different world than
definitely
what things were 2 or 3 weeks ago. And hopefully we will, in spite of all of the there's this Franklin Roosevelt FDR quote that's going around now, which is I don't know if it was through at the Depression or World War II, where he said he's going to be a straight shooter and say things are going to get worse and worse before they get better and better, and but they will get better. And we are still, I think, in the worst and worst part, but things will get better, and hopefully there will be things that we learn from this. That
the human spirit's resilient. I long for the days just weeks ago where we were debating helium balloons and leaf blower noise. And I'd like to get back to that kind of thing. It's but now it's all COVID-19 and this is serious. I mean, it's no joke. I mean, there are people who are dying because of it, and we have to take these really drastic actions to protect them. But I am an eternal optimist. I do believe we will get through this, and we'll be stronger because of it, and we'll have learned lots of lessons, and forever changed in some ways. But I do think that there is a silver lining on this somehow, and a light at the end of the tunnel. And we're going to have to be patient. This one isn't blowing past like a hurricane. This one is going to be with us for weeks, I think. And my executive order in the town is a 2-week order, and likely will have to get extended. I remember not that long ago at the beginning of this when SUNY was bringing the students back, and they were quarantining them at the campus, and I wasn't very happy about that because students from other campuses were coming to our campus to be quarantined for monitoring, coming back from Italy or from Japan or South Korea, and that a risk factor was being brought out here. And that's the least of my worries today. That
we should probably say that those students are coming towards the end of their quarantine, and none of them have exhibited any symptoms. But as you say, that was a big concern, and it seems now like it was 100 years ago.
100 years ago. And yeah, I heard that too, that the kids are all fine. I think the first group, the first 22 or so, 21, are being released Friday or Saturday out of quarantine, which is great. And they'll go back. And this doesn't seem to affect young people nearly as much as older people, that group over 60 or 70, particularly those with compromised immune systems. But young people could be a vector for it. And I see some young people who don't seem to take it as seriously as they probably should. They feel invincible.
Well, I think we can remember those days where you thought
but it's not about
nothing
them.
could harm you.
It's not so much about them. It's about who they might give it to. They'll probably get through it no problem. But they might pass it along to somebody who doesn't. So we're going to all stick together. We're going to do what we can. We're going to try to keep people informed. Channel 22 is a great way to stay informed. 311 is a telephone number the county set up. I know the state has a coronavirus hotline. I think we can put that up on the screen that people can call, and I think they can be directed as to where to get tested and other information. The town's website. I don't know, is there anything else, Fred, that other sources of information you might recommend to people?
Well, and again, our office, we can, and even if it's by email, you can always contact our office, and I'm sure the same as
Absolutely.
With you.
You want to give the number out?
Yeah, sure. The telephone number is 631-537-2583, and we're working in shifts also these days, but there's always somebody on the telephone, and of course, the assembly email is Thiele, Thielef, at nyassembly.gov.
And I appreciate you coming on to talk to people. You've been such a leader on so many issues, including healthcare issues, and it's always a pleasure to be able to work with you on different things, and we're all going to work together on this.
Well, thanks, and thank you for the great job you're doing.
Thank you.
I remember being town supervisor.
That's right. You had this chair.
You're on the front lines. Really, local government is the front lines for all of this. With all of the questions, people, they tend to contact town hall first. So thank you for all the great work.
Normally I would shake your hand, but we're doing social distancing.
We'll save that for another day.
But thank you for coming on, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Talk of the Town.